campers. I am Chef Brian Cooper and counselor extraordinaire at West River. We are here today to do tie-dye cupcakes, a camp classic. First, let's get started. Before any time cooking in the kitchen, we want to wash our hands. Here at my kitchen here at Pharmacy in Baltimore, we have to wear gloves, so let me get some gloves on. So for tie-dye cupcakes, always have your recipe on hand so you can check over that. We're going to need 1 cup of sugar, 2 farm fresh eggs, 4 store-bought, 1 stick of room temperature butter, 2 tablespoons of vanilla extract. Over to the dry ingredients, we will use 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons baking soda, 1 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup whole milk, and 4 different food colorings of your choice. I prefer to use the food color gel to make really great colors, and you only use a little bit in order to get a lot of color. So let's get started. We're going to first get a nice mixing bowl, started with our dry ingredients. So we'll take our 1.5 cups all-purpose flour. When measuring out your flour, you want to make sure when you scoop it out, you have something to level it off with, so you know it's perfectly level. Exact measurements. All right, so next step, we're going to add our other dry ingredients, which is going to be our 1.5 baking soda and our 1 teaspoon salt. We're going to take our whisk, mix thoroughly so everything is incorporated. That's pretty good. Moving on to our dry, wet ingredients. We're going to take our softened butter. It's going to be first. And put that in our bowl. Next, we're going to add our sugar. This part of the process is going to be called creaming. So what we need to do is we're going to take our whisk, and we're going to slowly get that room temperature butter mixed in with our sugar, so it becomes almost like a paste. A lot of times you're going to have to beat it on the side, get it off. Just trust in the process that it's going to mix together. All right, that is looking pretty good. Maybe just about another minute. As you can see, it's coming together really nicely to really get our whisk in and incorporate a little bit of air. That kind of makes our sugar and our butter nice and fluffy. Good. Don't worry about making a mess. Always clean that up later. Let's set that off to the side. Next step is going to be our 2 eggs. I do like to crack those eggs off to the side here, and I like to do 1 egg at a time, not both eggs at the same time. So I like to beat the egg a little bit by itself first, and then slowly incorporate it into your sugar and buttercream. Making sure everything's all incorporated. You see the yolk ribbons have all been distributed within, and it's becoming a nice fluffy consistency. Let's get that other egg in there. Push it off to the side, make a little room first. All right, next step, we're going to add our 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. I like to make sure each time I incorporate everything before adding the next one. If you ever see where you get a little bit mixed up here, you can take your spatula and kind of scrape down your edges. It's very important when you do a mixer as well. Excellent. Now onto your 1/2 cup milk. Again, pour that in slowly, maybe about half of that, and then incorporate that slowly again, as not to splash it all over the place, as you see I did over here. All right, perfect. Add the other. It's gonna start to look a little separated at this point, but that's okay. Once you add your wet to your dry ingredients, it'll all come back together. Okay, got our wet, we have our dry. We always add, keep a little well, we add our wet to our dry. Use your rubber spatula to scrape down everything. You don't want to leave nothing behind. You measured out all those ingredients. We want to make sure they all get inside. Then what you're going to do is nicely fold your wet into your dry. So that means pushing against the side of the bowl and folding it over on itself. You can go the opposite way as well. Nice and slow. Trying to incorporate all those dry ingredients with the wet. Scrape it down just like we talked about before, folding it on top of itself. I like to continue to mix until you see no more dry flour ingredients and there's no more lumps. See, there's some hiding down the bottom. Let's get it real deep there. All right, that looks great. All right, in order to get the tie-dye effect, we're gonna separate our batter. Let's change our gloves up real quick. We're gonna separate our batter into 4 different bowls. That's what all these bowls over here for. So we got 2 here, 2 here. Get some new gloves on. What we'll do is we'll separate this all out equally. And we'll add just a dollop of each one of our food colorings. I chose a teal green, nice lemon yellow, violet for the purple, and a little rose pink. Kind of like the colors I got in my tie-dye hat that I made at West River. If you're doing it by hand, you can just kind of take your rubber spatula and try to separate it. You can kind of see about how much you're gonna want to get in each bowl. And you can always adjust. It doesn't really matter. All right, so it's always good to wear gloves when you're using the gel because it will stain your fingers. It is super thick, as you can see, and it doesn't take a lot in order to get the colors that you want. So let's start with just a little bit of the purple. Let's go on to the pink. A little bit goes a long way, guys. If you're using kind of like store-bought, more liquidy style food coloring, in order to get brighter colors, you're gonna need a little bit more. Don't add too much just because you're adding a lot more liquid into your batter and it will make it a little bit runny. So keep that in mind. Maybe add more color to your frosting than your actual cake. This is the yellow. And lastly, we're gonna do the teal, which is one of my favorites. All right, let's mix them up. Look at that color. Want to make sure you scrape around the outside, incorporate all the color throughout. Let's move on to the yellow, purple, teal. We got our cupcake tin with 12 cupcakes and 12 cupcake papers. All right, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna grab my scoop and we're gonna scoop a little bit of purple into one side. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason how you do it, but we'll put a little bit of purple in each one. Maybe in different spots. Move on to, and at this point, it doesn't really matter if you mix up like your scoop or if you have separate scoops, because the point is to kind of mix the colors around a little bit. But we'll try to do like one kind of color at a time so they don't get too mixed. And you kind of end up with some really weird looking cupcakes. If you run out of one, no big deal, because you got plenty more of more. They can be all different kinds of colors. Go on to the yellow. And try to make sure that you get a little bit of the color in each one, but if you don't, yet again, no big deal. It's whatever color you want to make them. What you want to do is make sure you fill them up about like 3/4 of the way. maybe half to 3/4. That looks pretty good. Now what we're gonna do is grab a skewer and just do a couple little swirls. You might not be able to see them on the top of the cupcake, maybe a little bit. But once you'll open up the cupcake once it's baked, you'll see it's a little bit more pronounced of a swirl. But do it as much or as little as you want. You can leave them exactly like this. Okay guys, so now got them scooped out. We're gonna put them into the oven. We got the oven set at 350. And definitely be careful, the ovens are definitely super hot. Slide them in here. And there they go. About 15 minutes on 350, and that should do the trick. All right guys, I think they're just about done. Let's check them out. We're gonna pull them all the way out. Check a couple of them. Perfect, comes out perfectly clean. Let's check one more of this big guy right here. A little crummy. So let's put them back in just for a few more minutes. All right guys, I think they're definitely done this time. Let's poke them in and see. Oh yeah, perfect. Excellent. We're gonna put them down to cool. You don't have a cooling rack, just make sure that you set them out where they're not covered up so they'll have a nice chance to cool. Okay guys, we're back. We got our cupcakes cooled. Now it's on to the buttercream, the frosting, the best part. So make sure you have your recipe in hand, someplace close by. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start mixing our buttercream up. I'm gonna be using our heavy duty, small but heavy duty mixer. You can use an electric hand mixer. You can even use the whisk method that we used the last time to cream the butter. So that's what we're gonna start doing. So we got 2 sticks, maybe a little heavy, of room temperature butter. Get it all off on there. All right, so next step is we're gonna go ahead and get that kind of beating and whip some air into it, nice and fluffy. So you guys can hear me with this thing running. I always like to add my 1/4 cup of shortening. This is gonna give the mix a little bit of body, so it's not all butter. Go ahead and turn that off real quick so we can get that. It's very important that you don't have your hands inside of here. Obviously, you can definitely get hurt very easily by doing that. Got our shortening in there. Let's get that mixing. Once all the shortening is incorporated in the butter, you can move on to the next step. Super important. So I have our sifted powdered sugar, 4 cups. You want to sift it because there's granules inside of the powdered sugar. You want to make sure that it's not going to leave big lumps inside. Okay? You want to make sure that you turn your mixer down to the lowest setting where it keeps moving, and slowly add your powdered sugar. Definitely don't want to go too fast and end up throwing stuff all over the place. Okay? You start speeding it up a little bit once some of the powdered sugar is incorporated. Slow it back down to add the last bit of your ingredients. Vanilla. A dash of salt. And it's looking pretty liquidy, so we'll just add just a drop of the milk. I don't think we'll need it all. Remembering, just like with our cupcake batter, we want to scrape down the sides of our mixing bowl to make sure everything is incorporated. So all the dry stuff, even in the bottom, just in case it's not mixed up thoroughly. And then just like with our cupcake batter, we're going to separate this out and color it. Next step is, so we're going to freshen up our gloves, and we're going to separate out the buttercream frosting, just like we did with the cupcake batter. Got a separate spatula for each color. You might not have this option at your house, and I'm sure your mom doesn't want you to make that much of a mess and have that many dishes to do. So, you can just use one and just wipe it off in between each one. So let's go ahead and add our colors just like we did last time. Nice dollop of yellow, onto the violet, to the teal, and finally our pink. And again, if you're using the more liquidy food colorings that you get more readily available at the store, just don't use as much. Okay, let's get mixing. Again, trying to incorporate it all. Scraping down the sides. That's looking pretty good. What I'm gonna do is also go ahead and try to get it off to one side, because we're gonna be moving it from this bowl to a piping bag. Onto the teal. If there's a couple streaks in there, I think it'll look cool. Violet, purple, last one, the yellow. What I like to do is have the piping bags in a nice sized container. That way you can fill it up and have a little bit of stability when you're using it. If you don't happen to have nice piping bags like I do, you can get them from a kitchen store. Sometimes they sell them at cake stores in Walmart and Michael's, that type of thing. But if you can't find those, you can always use a Ziploc bag. Just ask mom or dad, or grandma, grandfather, if they can grab you some large 1 gallon Ziploc bags. All right, so we push that down. We'll add our yellow. Scraping down so we get every last little bit that we can. Good, that's perfect. I like to tap it down, and then when you pull it out, give it a big shake, hold it from the top. You want to squeeze it down like a toothpaste tube. Shake it again. I'm going to try to alleviate any air holes that are in it, so when you're pushing out your frosting, it doesn't go poop. You know? All right, that one is perfect. Get it kind of tightened up a little bit, set it off to the side. Let's move on to the next one, the violet. Same thing. Like to give it a nice twist. And again, push it off to the side. Teal. Try to get it down as inside the bag as deep as you can. Do it again to kind of alleviate some of the air bubbles that might happen. And that is ready to go. You're going to now use your piping tip. So if you have some of these, there's plenty of different kinds you can use. Round. These are a star tip close, so it kind of gives it a nice cool ribbon effect when you squeeze it out. Nice big one, opened up, already cut, ready to go. And what you're going to do, open it up wide in order to get this rainbow effect, this tie-dye effect with all your different colors. Sure, again, it's really far down there, no air bubbles, see? Here, cut it off. And then you're gonna slowly add these inside your other bag. Making sure you leave room for the last one. Perfect. And what you're gonna do is kind of bring them all together. Slowly shake them up. And then slowly push some of the frosting down so it lines up in your other frosting bag. Look at that. So it's all ready to go. All right. What I like to do is I like to start out with a little practice just to make sure the frosting is coming out the way you want it to. So come down here. We're going to give it a nice tight spin on the bag. And we'll press down with even pressure. And then swirl. Boom. So that looks pretty awesome. All the colors are represented in there. Looks really sweet. All right, let's move on to the cupcake. Again, what I like to do is start in the center of the cupcake, give even pressure, go to the outside, pick up as you go. Boom, one. Definitely like to leave a little bit of the cake showing. That way people can kind of see what your cake looks like as well. Boom. I'm gonna move pretty fast. Again. From the center, even pressure to the outside, picking up as you go along. Keeping your tip straight up and down. Look at those colors. And then on to the last one. Awesome. And of course, spoils of the chef, you get to try one. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Let's see. So good. So today's Bible verse, Matthew 22, verses 37 to 40. I'll read. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on to these two commandments. I definitely hold this commandment definitely true with working with campers and having my own children. Loving your neighbor as yourself is so important, especially in the times that we live in today. Just like these tie-dye cupcakes, we're a mix of all different colors, races, religions, ethnicities. And I just take this and it reminds me of just how we need to work together and treat each other equally and do our best to help change the world and to do good with others. The prayer of St. Francis. If you could bow your head, fold your hands. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, for it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardon that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Hey, what'd you do with my other cupcake? It's okay, we'll share. Guys, thanks so much for spending a little bit of time with me, learning how to make these tie-dye cupcakes. It was so much fun. It was an honor to be here. So looking forward to seeing you guys all next year at camp, or as soon as we can, okay? God bless. So to start the buttercream, we're gonna get 4 cups of powdered sugar. This is a half cup I'm using, so we're gonna do 8 of those. We're gonna sift it. The reason why we wanna sift it is sometimes when you have powdered sugar, you get really nice big lumps. You don't want big lumps inside of it. Let's go with that real quick first. I have a nice little strainer here that you can use. Don't worry about if you get it out of there. You can always scoop it back inside of the bowl that you're using. Sometimes you can take your hand, push it through. See it? All right, just a few more. All right. Again, sifting it, and then finally pushing it through with your fingers, making sure you get out all those lumps. Perfect. All right, let's move on.